There's a question that doesn't get asked enough. Who is actually in charge? Not who's on the ballot, not the one who's behind the podium, not whose face is on the news tonight, but who or what is actually operating behind the scenes of our visible leaders. And most people don't even stop to even think to ask that question. But history tells us that this is exactly how it's designed. 3 things were passed in this country in a single year that fundamentally restructured this country forever. 3 massive changes that happened in 1 year, passed quietly, while most people were just trying to survive. Sound familiar? It should, because ancient Rome went through the same thing, and they had an answer to the question of who's really in charge as well. So you must understand, there are patterns in history that are bigger than any one president, any one party, and any one nation. As the wise Solomon once told us, there is nothing new under the sun. So let's check out these clips from the Sean Ryan podcast and see what happened in ancient Rome. Maybe an all too familiar story for us here in America today. Hit that like button. Let's get this out to more people, and let's check this out together.
Are we an empire?
I think we've been an empire for a long time.
How long?
And I think that because, are you familiar with what happened in the year 1913?
What happened?
Under the presidency of Woodrow Wilson?
Check this out.
It's a very pivotal year. There's 3 things that happened that year. You know, a lot of people will be familiar with the Jekyll Island meeting that created the Federal Reserve. That happens in 1913. And the Federal Reserve Act is passed over the Christmas break when the Warburg family, who's one of the German banking families, is there. The Rockefellers are there.
Big names.
And they basically decide that they want to prop up a central bank because they want to protect their own assets. Because if you look at the Federal Reserve, it's not federal and it's not, it doesn't have any reserves. It's basically a cartel. And it's owned by member banks. And a lot of the member banks are banks you're aware of. And the bigger investor in them is the BIZ, or the Bank of International Settlements in Basel. So it is really a cartel of banking. So they established this thing in 1913. The other thing that passes that year is the 16th Amendment for income tax. Because now, if you have this bank, you have to have a way to fund it, right? And they're going to fund it by taxing people. They had tried taxes after the Civil War to this extent, and it didn't last very long. But the income tax amendment sticks. The other thing that passes is the 17th Amendment, and this gets almost...
So this is not even drawn up by government.
Mm-mm.
Wow.
The other thing that passes that year, which no one seems to talk about, and this actually would have been pivotal during COVID, the 17th Amendment makes it so senators are no longer selected by state legislatures. They're selected by popular vote.
Why does Rome still matter for today?
Well, I think when you look at it, as I said earlier, history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme in a lot of ways. And I think if you understand patterns that happen in history, you can understand a lot of what's happening in your world today, because I think we look at modern politics and we see the things that are happening and we try to say, okay, well, if we just make this solution now, it'll solve it.
The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000.
And if we look at earlier empires, especially Rome, it's something that those short-sighted solutions often don't fix things.
Yeah. Wow.
Praetorian Guard actually auctions the empire to him. So he pays a certain price and he gets to be emperor. And after around 80 days, they kill him.
Yeah, listen to this. Praetorian Guard.
Who's they?
The Praetorian Guard, because they had become the power behind the throne. And they're responsible for killing somewhere around 17 different emperors that we know of. If they weren't happy, they might kill the emperor, and this happens on a number of occasions.
So was this like a shadow government? So the Praetorian...
Let's stop right there, and then we'll play the rest of this. What do you think so far? And did you catch that question? Is this a shadow government? That's the right question. But I want to go a little bit deeper than that, because what Sean and Jeremy are describing is a pattern that predates Rome. It predates 1913. It predates every empire that has ever risen and fallen. The Apostle Paul himself was writing from inside the Roman Empire when he said these words: "We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, Paul wasn't trying to be like poetic or anything. He was being precise. He wasn't ignoring the system. He wasn't trying to ignore this Praetorian Guard that they're talking about. He's not saying that we should ignore what happened in 1913. But what he was saying was that behind every visible power structure, there is an invisible one. Let that sink in. Because here's what that ultimately means for us. If the battle is spiritual, if it in fact is ultimately spiritual, then the solution is going to be spiritual. Meaning you can't vote your way out of a spiritual problem. You can't legislate your way out of a spiritual problem. You can't protest your way out of a spiritual problem. Only the kingdom of God stands when empires fall. So let's get into this next clip. And again, let me know what you think, because the Praetorian Guard didn't care what the people thought. They cared about being close to the wheels of power. And the regular people, they were just trying to survive. And it should sound familiar because it's what's happening with us today. Here we go.
Guard. Where do they get their decision making from?
Sword! Give me a sword! Sheathe your sword!
Are they of the people?
So they are
They the pulse of the people, or are they strictly a shadow government?
So they were originally the private bodyguard of the Emperor Augustus, and they just become the protector of emperors. They wouldn't have cared what the people thought. They would have cared about being so close to the wheels of
Doesn't that sound right? They were the protector of the emperors until they killed them.
power.
What are the people thinking of all of that? Do the people even matter at all?
In Roman history, one of the biggest missing pieces that we have is what did the regular people do during their lives? Because for them, it was survival. They were worried about flooding. The Tiber River would flood every year. They were worried about disease. They were worried about dying from random things. They were worried about being able to pay for things. They didn't really have time to care about those things. And as you get into the later empire, a lot of them would have never even seen an emperor. Their life is just so drastically different than those that have money or those that have political power. They're just worried about survival.
Sounds familiar.
Centralization of power, emergency authority becomes permanent.
Rome had an oral constitution. And when a crisis arose, they would alter it to handle the crisis. But the problem is, once you do that, you don't go back. And if you look at that with a lot of things we've experienced, the war on terror or 9/11 or a lot of these different things that happen, the Patriot Act has dramatically changed our lives.
Yes. Sure did. Everything.
Rome was very similar in a lot of ways. An emperor gives away citizenship because he needs to handle the treasury, or Christians are being persecuted because they want to bring back the peace of the gods. So they're trying to handle whatever's there right now because they couldn't think in the future, right? Because especially in the 3rd century, these guys are living such a short period of time. They're thinking about, what do I have to do to live?
Wow. Wow.
And we can see that now with each crisis altering how we operate, right? You look at even with a lot of the woke stuff that's happened, like the verbiage we used to use, we can't use anymore.
That's what I was kind of getting at in the Bible, is a lot of the woke stuff, a lot of the gender stuff, that was all happening in Rome, correct?
Again, let me know what you think in the comments, because Jeremy said something there at the end that I don't want us to slide past. He said a lot of that gender stuff, a lot of the cultural shifts, all of what is happening in Rome too. It was happening in Rome just like it's happening here right now. And Solomon was right thousands of years ago before when he said, what has been is what will be, and there is nothing new under the sun. That's Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9. Now, this is not doom. This is discernment. The patterns are not new. The players are not new, because the spiritual forces behind them are not new. But neither is the answer. Every empire in history has had the same fundamental problem. It's not bad politics. It's not corrupt banking systems. It's not even shadow governments. It's something that we all face, and it infects every human of all time. It's the human heart. The human heart, left to itself, will always reach for power. It will always protect its own interest. It will always sacrifice others to survive. And the Bible calls this sin. And sin is not a political problem. It's a human problem. It's a spiritual problem. And it's your problem, and it's mine. But here's what makes the gospel different from every other answer in history. Jesus Christ did not come to fix a system. He didn't come to be some political ruler like they wanted him to. He came to save people from the system and from themselves. He lived the life that we couldn't live. He died the death that we deserve. And he rose from the grave, proving that no empire, no power, no system built by human hands has a final word, because only God does. So if you're watching this today and something is stirring inside your heart, understand that this is not conspiracy thinking. That is your conscience. The question is not who's behind the throne. Who's behind the throne of America? Who's behind the throne of the world? In fact, the question is more personal. The question is, who's on the throne of your heart? Because every empire eventually answers to the one who holds all authority in heaven on earth. His name is Jesus. And he's not asking for your political allegiance. He's asking for your surrender. So if you've never surrendered your life to Jesus, make today the day. Don't think that this video is a coincidence upon your life, because I don't want you to make that decision just because the world is falling apart, and it kind of seems like it is. But make that decision today because he's worth it, because he loves you, because he gave his life for you. Turn away from your sin, trust in Christ alone, and step into the only kingdom that will never, ever fall. Thanks for being here with me, my friends. I appreciate this time, as always, that we have together. Hit that like button. Let's get this out to more people. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Truth Be Told. I would love to have you along with me on this journey. My name is Jeremiah James. I pray that you will be blessed today. Truth be told.